Hi everyone. Our next lecture is titled Cash for Bugs, Chaos to All. Please welcome Antoine.
Many thanks everyone for having me. I'm still a bit nervous. It's my first time at BalCCon, but I'm sure I'm going to be fine in a couple of minutes. Okay, so I'm going to talk about bug bounty today, and I want to start off by telling the story of the Cobra effect. I'm sure it's very popular. A lot of people know it, but for those who don't, the Cobra effect is an anecdote from like the 19th, 20th century during the British colonial empire, where in India actually, and where the British colonial forces were confronted with a plague of cobras, and they came up with the idea to incentivize the population to bring them dead cobras, and they would get a little reward for that. So what could go wrong? Of course, with time, people started breeding cobras so that they can bring the dead snakes and optimize their financials. So this is a typical story about false incentives that has been popularized by a German author called Horst Siebert in the book that's called The Cobra Effect, back in 2001. It's kind of like what I want to talk about in the context of bug bounty. So let me first introduce the company I work for. Swisscom is the leading telecoms company in Switzerland. Well, no wonder it has been the state company for a long time. So it's still the market leader, and we have about 19,000 FTEs and generate about 11 billion annual revenue per year. And I want to talk about like the different business fields Swisscom deals with. So main business field, of course, is everything telecommunications. So now we're talking about mobile, but also broadband, so internet, TV, and of course, like fixed lines, what we used to have like for about a century, and now is getting obsoleted. But also in the B2B field, we also offer corporate telephone and telecom services, as well as ICT solutions, and also wholesale. This is, we rent our infrastructure to other ISPs, and in the end, we also have another field, lots of subsidiaries, actually a big one, a very critical one that does the whole network construction. Then we also have people who do broadcasting, so, and lots of small to medium enterprises that develop digital platforms. This is also pretty relevant in the context, since Swisscom's bug bounty program actually covers all of those business fields. I also want to talk about the specific threats a telecommunication company faces, maybe not specifically Swisscom, but in this industry. I mean, most of telcos are seen as critical infrastructure because communications, I mean, you need to imagine all of the police and emergency services rely on telecommunications, but also when we go and talk about networking, all the rest, it's the nervous system of the society, so all the financial sector is based on it, and so on. So availability is really critical. Also, in the context of bug bounty, when we find, or when vulnerabilities are identified, we also need to think of the privacy in the context of the Telecommunications Act. So, like, what our customers are communicating is we need to protect that and to make sure nobody sees it, and we're getting in trouble if we don't protect that right. And in the end, maybe a third threat, which is also a major concern, is network abuse and fraud. So whenever people, you can just think of spamming, of overloading the network, but also fraudulent activities on the network, being like, I don't know, abusing the mobile network to send phishing SMS, stuff like that. All right, so now I want to dive in my specific work environment, which is the Swisscom Cyber Defense team. And I just want to say that we were established about 10 years ago from a merger of different security teams in the Swisscom group at the time, and from different departments. And we've evolved from a classic SOC CSIRT team into roughly 10 specialized cybersecurity disciplines, which you can see on the slide. But it's not everything we do. It's like what we do at cyber defense, but I have colleagues here that also do security, which are at other departments, which would do, for instance, fraud management, DevSecOps. This is mostly distributed, so it's not in one team, but we also have network security people, infrastructure security, and so on. So we're not the only ones, but we have some concentration at Swisscom Cyber Defense. And so now I want to dive in specifically into my team, which I have the privilege to be part on, because it's kind of like a unicorn discipline, I think. Not a lot of people or a lot of companies operate a bug bounty program, let alone a self-managed one. And I want to say that during this presentation, I'm going to share really observations from my perspective, and I want to elaborate on the setup we have. So I'm definitely not going to be able to represent the views from other companies, neither from bug hunters or for platforms, and we're definitely not in the same league as, like big tech, like the big companies in the US companies that do that also have large bug bounty programs. So what you see here is our security TXT, and I like it a lot. I have a personal relationship to it because one of the authors at Overflow, who actually authored the RFC 9116 security TXT, is actually lived roughly 100 meters from me, and I just figured out later on. So hi, Ed, if you hear me. So it's we could say it's a Swiss invention, so I'm pretty proud of it. All right, so let me at first talk about bug bounty in general, like to set the stage. And I think I already said it's kind of like a unicorn discipline, and it's definitely not one of the boring stuff you're going to do in cybersecurity. It's one of the more interesting stuff, but I'd say you can't do it without first doing the boring stuff, because this is just what you need to do. If you don't do that, you can't take any shortcuts, in my perspective. So before you go on and do like the shiny stuff like AI and so on, and you think you have the silver bullet solution and you're going to cut costs, of course it's innovative, but I think you can't take shortcuts. You need to do your homework, and I think one of the things is that we need to realize is bug bounty is kind of like something you can do. If you're talking about push left, when we want to think about security early enough, like at the conceptual phases of a project, well, bug bounty is going to be on the far right. It's like when you've done everything, you might want to think about bug bounty to catch the rest that you have not thought about. I think that would be the idea. So why would you want to have a bug bounty program? I wasn't there when the Swisscom bug bounty program was started, so I don't have all information. I can just imagine why it was done, or why in general we would like to have a bug bounty program. So what's the need? What gap are you trying to fill? Well, I think that the most interesting part of thinking about bug bounty or vulnerability disclosure in general is you want to, first, you acknowledge, well, nobody's perfect, there's no 100% security, so you need to provide a channel for external parties, either your customers, security researchers, bug hunters, anyone who find maybe accidental findings and they want to report it to someone, or people actively looking for vulnerabilities because they know that they'll be rewarded. So the first thing is you want to formalize that process. And so you can use security TXT, but it's not done just with by publishing the text, the TXT file. You also need to have actually a team that responds to it. I have some examples at the end of the presentation to show you how that just sometimes doesn't work. So the goal is to make it as easy as possible for security researchers to contact you. And then next, I think you might want to expand conventional testing methods. So we talked about all the homework you need to do, and then you do all your pen testing and so on. And you're like, okay, but pen testing is always like this snapshot, and you're not, you need to do it regularly, and you're only going to focus on a specific application, but not on the whole context. So bug bounty provides you additional means to do continuous security testing, also to identify cross-silo issues, which is very important because context matters all the time. I'm going to repeat that afterwards. And you also want to have a viable economic model, because pen testing, it's cool, but it's expensive. And as I said, it ought to be a solution of last resort, and not like, you won't start with bug bounty, although some vendors will tell you you need to do it. But that's my perspective. Again. Next, there are, what I observe, some very fundamental positive effects of running a bug bounty program, is especially if you have an open scope like we do across different kinds of companies, and all those companies don't have the same alignment technology-wise, governance-wise, strategically. So some of our subsidiaries are very have a big risk appetite, some others don't, and also we often do miss the overview. So like, we don't know what we operate, we don't know how much we spend in security and so on. So that's all helping out. So in the end, what will be your strategy? Say you want to develop a bug bounty program, you need to ask yourself lots of questions, like what is your scope? Will you focus only on specific applications? Do you want to have everything in it? Do you want to externalize the operation of the bug bounty program, or do you want to do it in your company? Do you want to allow everyone to participate, or only hackers with already a certain reputation? How much money do you want to invest in a bug bounty program? This is directly related to the duration of your bug bounty program, because imagine if you run out of budget, well, you're going to disappoint a lot of hackers, and you won't be able to run, to continue running the program. Then also lots of things about policies and rules. It's constant evolution. We're going to talk about the use of AI and LLMs. And also the reward structure, because this is actually the carrot you're giving the. I'm sorry for the. I don't want to call the hackers donkeys, but very roughly, we're really, it's an incentivation. You want to motivate people, and this is how you steer what you want to get, right? So let me show you how we implemented at Swisscom. So as I said, this was decided more than 10 years ago, and it's a remarkable setup, especially since it was one of the first companies in Switzerland to incorporate a program. And at that point, since I don't have all the background information, I'm not sure if my predecessor or my predecessors, I don't know how they managed to convince the upper management, and if the upper management was really as brave as to open the bug bounty program on all those dimensions, or if they just didn't really realize it. So, but yeah. In any case, it's a great program to run because we gained a high maturity with time. So when comparing with other companies in Switzerland, we've gone a long way. And from the beginning on, I was decided to do it on our own, so not to outsource it. Because the requirements in the setup was just too complex, having all those dimensions open. So like open participation, open scope, you can report on any assets from Swisscom. And yeah, so something else is the triage is performed in-house, so I also participate in triage. At the beginning, it was a SOC CISO team doing the triage, but now we have like 2.5 FTEs doing it. We have lots of interns and people from other departments rotating in our team because it's a great way, triage is a great way to learn about like hands-on security. And we operate using a very rudimentary setup. So we use Jira as a ticket system. We report via email because this is the common denominator when you involve subsidiaries, vendors, suppliers, and so on. You could do it with Jira, but then you'd need more licenses and so on. So it's not top-notch, it's not even secure, but it's secure enough. And we do lots of homegrown automation. So this is also fun. Okay, so now I want to talk about the platforms. Because they're a key player in the whole ecosystem. So if we look at the emergence or the history of all this business, I think, well, okay, so just to tell you that the list is not exhaustive, but I want to pick, I just picked some remarkable points in time. So I think a lot of you, and I think it was on this day or maybe yesterday that Netscape 2.0 was released, and with that also it was the first notable public bug bounty program, but it didn't really took off like 10 years later. 2004 Mozilla was the first notable program for free and open source software. This is why I included it in here, and this is where the first notable intermediary comes in. So the zero-day initiative is not a bug bounty platform yet, but is kind of, the idea is to address, like, okay, we have the block market for exploits and vulnerabilities, and now we want also to see how we can provide a business model to buy this intelligence and yeah, somehow finance it. So then Google came in, and I think it's notable because they're the ones that really popularized web application security in the bug bounty, because now what we do is like 90 to 95% of web application security, because it's, on one hand, it's what you have the most exposed, at least in our case, but otherwise it's where the community has also developed the most know-how and so on. What do we have? Facebook, notable because at first, I went to see on archive.org, they really didn't put an upper limit on their bounties, so that was kind of like, yeah, you can get rich, or maybe not, I don't know. And 2012, also very notable because HackerOne and Bugcrowd are now the leading bug bounty platforms worldwide. And CNAC is also an interesting model because it's more on the, they have a community of hackers, but I think they focus more on pen testing and like crowdsourced pen testing rather than just opportunistic bug bounty hunting, because they also set a lot of targets for participants. So it's kind of like having a team, but with a high bar of being there. All right, so I have a second slide on the history. What's notable now is that bug bounty is getting known. So we see it in the public. So the Dutch government publishes the first national guidelines for responsible disclosure. So you might know the T-shirts, like I hacked the Dutch government and all I got was this lousy T-shirt. Swisscom, as I said, entered the game in 2015. Then, yes, we hack in Integrity. I wanted to mention them because they're the European counterparts of Bugcrowd and HackerOne. Then the US DoD started in the defense environment also to employ bug bounty. The EU Council started funding for open source software in 2017 with was a pilot program for the video alarm client, VLC. Then the French Defense Ministry started working with Yes We Hack also for another initiative. And for Switzerland, it was the National Cybersecurity Center starting a pilot with a Swiss company called Bug Bounty Switzerland that they are still running right now. So if we look at the legacy of these platforms, we can say that they really democratized the ethical hacking or bug hunting, whatever. They really pushed it. And we see it, we see the recognition, we see they're like famous bug hunters, they're almost like influencers, pushing it also with the Hall of Fames. We really have those role models. And it made it really mainstream and generally accepted, like for governments and in society, but also in the corporate world. So what they also are super good at and recognized it's super important is like all this community engagement with the live hacking events, in-person summits, and so on. Education, you get lots of guides, training courses, hacking labs, and certifications even. And in the end, you also have like a new ecosystem of services that you'll do recon and so on, out-of-band testing, tools, everything. But what they've also done and that they really set the bar for what counts as valid or impactful bugs in the industry. And so they really define the frameworks for the payouts and how the rules are done. So let's see how all those players work together, because for all of the players, it's about achieving more with less, right? So we have, I generalize it with like three key players. So you have the operators, that would be us, like Swisscom, that operate the program. We have the hackers, on the other hand, that participate in the programs, and we have the platforms as intermediaries. So the program operators, of course, they want to minimize their risks, but their specific risks. So either specific to their business industry or to their own company. But they want to spend only as much resources as needed, so because in the end they want to maximize profit. The hackers, I talked about the carrot before, they just follow that carrot. They follow the signaled incentives, and they can follow different strategies. They can either go in breadth, like with automating lots of stuff, or go really deep, in depth, and find niches, or do vulnerability and exploit development for specific software products used in the corporate world, well, where they know they could maximize a profit. And what's also very important for hackers is reputation is the other currency, because this is how you get invited into private programs, and as the more reputable you are, the more opportunities you will have to find vulnerabilities with less competition. And in the end, you also have the platforms that adopt a growth strategy. So they want to offer, or they can only offer, a standardized or commodity service that it's like kind of like a one-size-fits-all. Because as all three players want. They want to maximize the profit. So let's talk about operators first. So that's our part. I want to be very self-critical about it. First of all, as we know, so hackers, they lack any form of social protection. You don't have any health insurance, you're on your own. Okay, so if you get sick, we're not going to pay you. Sorry. We're going to shift all the risks onto the hackers. I mean, think about duplicate handling. If two researchers independently find the same vulnerability, only the first reporter will get a reward. The second will maybe get some reputation points, but you can't eat or sleep with reputation points. You have your rent to pay, right? So it's only an indirect goodie. Did you ever think about it? I mean, why can we not acknowledge that two hackers could independently find something? Why don't we trust them? Because in the other case, you'd have two hackers which work together. So one of them does the work and says, okay, I found a vulnerability, I got $1,000 reward. Hey, you know what? Just also report it to Swisscom. And we're like, okay. Well, we're not sure if it was authentic or not. So even if I just give you like half of it, they could just say, well, go to Swisscom and you can get $500, and we're just like a money printing machine. So this doesn't work. We're not going to go that way, and this is not a Swisscom invention. Actually, I think every bug bounty program works that way. But in the end, we're not going to support that risk. That risk is all with the hackers. Also, financial expectations. You invest a lot of work in your research. You have no idea what's the price tag. So all of that is like, well, you can take it or leave it. But the companies, the operators are not going to take this risk. Now, also I talked about, or I mentioned the safe harbor, which kind of like tries to address the hacking is a crime topic, because in a lot of countries, hacking is still a crime, as for instance in Switzerland. It's only a black and white perspective. Either you did an intrusion or you didn't, and if you did, then you're liable. You can get you get legal consequences. So what we can tell you is, like, we want to allow you, because there's some interpretation, there's space for interpretation, and we'll try to turn it the way that we say, yeah, well, we allow you to do it because we wanted to allow bug hunting. But in the end, if one of our suppliers say, yeah, we're going to sue that hacker because he touched our infrastructure, we're not going to hire lawyers. Fortunately, it didn't happen. I mean, it would be also very bad for our reputation, but I would be surprised to see. Well, the problem is we don't have any precedent. So without any precedent, I don't know, I can tell you how it's going to work out. So these are the typical precarious working conditions that you have, like from the gig economy. Think about Uber drivers and so on. So operators are also reluctant to allow public disclosure. I mean, I really love to have some of our participants being able to blog or to present our findings, but somewhere, in our management or communications department, people were like, yeah, we know we authorized them, but could you ask him not to publish it because it will still harm our reputation? And we're like, yeah, well, and the hackers are friendly enough to say, yeah, no problem. So I'm really thankful for them, but I'd rather wish that we would be as transparent as possible. Economic models, this economic model actually is barely sustainable. This is why I put the image of the Easter Island statue, because there people push deforestation as far as to just not being able to live anymore on that island. So I think that's the same we're seeing here. So this is why platforms and their efforts to take care of the community is really super important. But they don't do that just because they're nice. They also have their hidden agenda, right? So if it was all given to operators, we will just be risking to let the ecosystem collapse because we're just, we want to maximize the profit, and we're not going to think about all the goodies, because otherwise it would get more expensive, and then we could just as good do classic pen testing. Okay, so this short-sightedness and taking all those bug hunters for granted, this is where operators are really not good at. So now, a little experiment. I need to speed up, I realize. Can I ask you all to close your eyes? You don't need to if you don't want to, but I want to have you imagine a vulnerability report, a remote vehicle unlock exploit. So you have someone who's able, with an electronic device, to unlock your car. Now, open your eyes again. I'm going to show you a car. So that would be a very interesting car to unlock remotely, right? But the same car could actually be that one. I mean, that's an expensive car, but it doesn't have any doors. So, yeah. And the last car is that one. I mean, the vulnerability is all the same, but the impact it has is just totally different. So I want to talk about reward schemes, especially the metrics. Like the one everyone wants to use is CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, because maybe you can agree, maybe you can have the impression that it's totally, yeah, thanks. You have the impression it's a good metric, it's a fair metric and everything, but it's a proxy metric like the GDP maybe, because it's misleading. It doesn't capture any context for the affected organization. So what I think we have at least two further dimensions, which would be the business impact. Like think of the money van. That would have a big business impact. The little toy car, nah, less. And also the threat level, which is also very industry specific or maybe also company specific. So like, yeah, the whole point what I want to say is I'm going to skip those examples because I'm running out of time. So there's a vulnerability fallacy. The assumption that when vulnerabilities exist, they will be exploited is like, yeah, we know vulnerabilities are there, but will someone even care about those vulnerabilities and to exploit them? You need to have some motivation. Your adversary needs to want something when they look for these vulnerabilities. So, we have a kind of a cognitive dissonance here. So what the platforms and the hackers are providing is vulnerability management, but what the operators or companies actually want is risk management. And this clashes, right? This is not good. Now, I want to talk now about those perverse incentives, because this is what I was advertising at the beginning of the presentation. So in the cybersecurity world, it's super easy to do marketing with it's like in the insurance business. You can like do a lot of fear mongering, which I really dislike, and our company also does that. I try to explain that's not good, but I'm just someone, my team mates and so on, we're just not so very relevant. This food, fear, uncertainty, and doubt is very easy because we're talking about known unknowns and also unknown unknowns. You don't really know if there are vulnerabilities or if you have attackers and so on. You just can you can just imagine a monster and they'll really, if they have the good sales tactics and can convince you, they sold you their solution. So how does that play out? On one hand, so this is pissing at the vendors, at the platforms. This is just one text I just saw this morning on one of the platform websites. They say they have a global community of 2 million hackers. Now, my expectation as a customer would be like, yeah, I have all those 2 million hackers are like maybe a bell curve, or I don't know, but somehow they're super good, all of them. But actually, this is the distribution of the payouts for like the 5,000. So this is a data set, a sample of 5,000 payouts that HackerOne provides on their via an API. And what we can see, it's highly skewed. So actually only the top 10% of the hackers make up 50% of the rewards. This line at the bottom, these are all like $50 rewards. So a lot of them, and it goes on. Like I only took 5,000. You could go like, I don't know, like maybe 10,000, 20,000. It just stays like that. So another one where I see a lot of things I dislike or in the industry is this whole vulnerability hyping, especially and from both players, hackers on one hand, but also platforms. Because hackers, if they convince you that a vulnerability is super bad, you will pay more. And the other really bad setup is when the platform is actually taking 20% commission off of that bounty reward. So it's not, you can't tell me it's in my best interest like to not to hype the vulnerability. So let me give you an example. Personally, I think XSS is totally overrated. I do acknowledge that XSS is, so cross-site scripting needs to be fixed, especially if you're like down basic like infrastructure provider. But if you're an SME, it shouldn't be your first priority. And you can think of it as like the racing car. The racing car, I just went and see the F1 movie with Brad Pitt, and they talk about like designs and getting milliseconds of advantage just because of the form of your wings and so on. This makes sense when you're designing a racing car, but when you're designing like a little platform with 50,000 customers, I think you can afford the XSS, or it shouldn't be your first priority at all, because the threat model may be not given, or yeah, I know it's like in an ideal world you would want to fix every vulnerability, but sometimes you need to prioritize. Okay, so a little fun story about that is I was wondering, okay, is XSS relevant like for a normal company? Imagine an SME or maybe a bit larger company even, and I mean, one threat that affects them all is ransomware. So the CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency in the US, has this new service where they list all the known exploited vulnerabilities. And I was looking for XSS. There are 2 mentions of it. This is one of them, affecting a Cisco ASA version. And they said it's known to be used in ransomware campaigns. So it's confirmed by CISA. Then you go to Cisco and see their summary. They also tell you it's been observed that threat actors are exploiting it. And then if you dig some more, you see a post by Tenable, which is a vulnerability scanning company. And they tell you, yes, we've observed, well, there's a proof of concept and bug hunters are exploiting it. So you're back at square one. And so that's kind of like the self-fulfilling prophecy. So I still, if you know about some cases where XSS has led to ransomware and it's significant, like not just once, but like, I'd really be interested, because then I would prioritize XSS some more. Now, to end the presentation, I also want to talk about a new trend in the bug bounty world. So we have, of course, AI. And in my perception right now, AI is currently doing more harm than good for the ecosystem. And both on the platform side, but also on the hacker side. So one example is another quote from a vendor that says they have the fastest, fairest, and most accurate triage experience. I would agree on fastest and fairest because it's really fast. The AI bot will just reject your vulnerability, and it's fair because everyone's going to get their submissions rejected. So, but it's not very accurate. So we had. Unfortunately, I'm afraid I won't have time to tell you the whole example, but we have had lots of examples, no, not lots, but like a handful of examples where this was just really bad, because we have some like double coverage where some suppliers also use a platform, so we are like, okay, we need to forward the report, and they just wanted to have reported on their platform, and the platform. So we already validated the vulnerability, and we say it's a real one. It needs to get fixed, and then the AI bot comes and says, no, you're rejected. So it's another thing that the hackers need to overcome. Is like not the first level triage, but now also bypass the AI bots. So it's bad for the hackers, bad for the operators. Now from the hacker side, of course, maybe you've heard about Daniel Stenberg, who's been ranting. I admit, I'm also doing a lot of ranting in this presentation, but Daniel Stenberg has been sharing all the submissions he got on curl and libcurl, which are very convincing from text, but are all LLM generated. And he draws a very black picture of how bug bounty is going to evolve if that doesn't change. Because we also, as a triage team, are getting overwhelmed with very convincing reports. And when you look at them, it's like, no, it's just nonsense. This is not good. It harms also the good researchers, because we have less resources to actually focus on the real significant stuff. So that's not cool. So I'm at the end. I have one last slide with my conclusions, with my personal observations. So although the platforms have been around for 15 years, I think bug bounty programs are still new for enterprises to run themselves. So it's a new discipline for them. They've been relying too much on platforms. And so far it seems that the interests of the platforms are totally overrepresented. So we need to, as an operator, I think we need to step up and form communities of practice amongst operators. I know that hackers also collaborating in different communities. And I think from an operator side, we should also do the same. And there are some local and global communities of practice that are slowly emerging. And I think the goal would be to identify that we do have individual goals. So like I said, like every player wants to have its part of the cake and to maximize their profit. But can we still achieve a win-win-win situation where all three players in the ecosystem have enough, and not just like one of them takes more of the cake? This is it. Thanks a lot for listening to my presentation, my rants. A little hint, I've been hiding Easter eggs in our security.txt file for a couple of years now, so if you're up for a challenge, go check it out. Thanks a lot, and if you have any questions.
Thanks a lot, Antoine. Do we have any questions?
Hello. Just one short question. Is the bug bounty most risky about all other things in the red program. For example, pen testing, you will always get some report. And in the bug bounty, you can spend months and to get nothing.
This is, well, as a bug hunter, you're exposed to really high competition. You're actually competing against the whole bug bounty community. Yeah. Unless you've already gained some reputation and you get personal invites for private bug bounty programs where you have more opportunities to find vulnerabilities. But that's, I mean, you can work your way up, but at that time, I think it's almost like being born with rich parents. I mean, you need to have a good head start to be even able. So I don't know, I've been doing a tiny little bit of bug hunting. I got lucky, I really got some cash, but I couldn't afford to do it. I'm much more comfortable in my daily job, and in pen testing, of course, it's never a good feeling to provide an empty report without any findings, because your customer will be like, well, are we really that good, or is just the pen testing company really bad? So.
Yeah, but you have already agreed the sum for that pen test.
Yes.
And you will be paid.
You will be paid.
And here you can go and waste a lot. You have to be really, or as I said to my colleague, really full or rich, or to be mentally strong.
Yes.
To be able to say, okay, for 3 months I didn't find nothing. I saw some comments in some communities, and to be okay with that.
Yes. Yeah. It's a high-risk occupation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
you can have lots of I think maybe it's comparable to finance, maybe. I mean, you can do big gains. I know. I mean, seeing what we are paying out to some of our bug hunters, I'm like, why am I even working here? I mean, they some of them earn like 3 times more at least than I do, if I extrapolate from what I see or what they also publicly share. And but we have, like, I mean, these are the people on top of the pyramid. And so if I go back to that slide where we see the long tail graph, I mean, most of the people are on that flat line at the bottom. So
yeah, like Novak Djokovic was talking about that, only if you're in first 100 tennis players, you can have some money, maybe just even for the expenses. If you are 101st, you will not have money.
Yeah, so, I totally agree. It's like being a football star, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Kudos for the first time. And my question is regarding the program. How do you cope? How do you communicate with hackers? Like coping, like you mentioned, you have duplicates. You have a low business impact when you need to explain a hacker that, okay, this is some privileged escalation, but this portal is not important to us. You don't need, you can't do anything with it. So how do you maintain to motivate them? And did you have, for example, some funny or less funny story? For example, that someone said that you cheated him for some money because he imagined that reward is already his. And did you have some incidents that kind?
No. Well, I have some. So it's really difficult. Also, I think it comes down as well to that slide where where is my slide? I think it's later on. Sorry, where really the hackers are expecting to say, well, this is a valid vulnerability. Give me money, and we're like, yeah, we acknowledge it's a vulnerability, but it has no impact for us. So it's like the toy police car. It's not the race car. So I'm sorry. And that's the whole problem is that this is not transparent. And it's very difficult for expectation management, and I don't have a solution for that. The only solution I see is to be as fair as possible in communication. And also that we say, sometimes we reject something, and then we're like, we revisit, and we say, no, actually that was really of value. And so we reopen, and we tell our hackers, listen, we just revisited, and you're now getting paid. And I think it's only small things like that, and we try to be we know that we can't open our books, we can't like say what are our most critical applications and put them on the internet. That's not something we can do, but at least we can be as transparent and fair as possible.
Sadly, that's all the time we have for questions. Please, everyone, another applause for Anton.